Hey Fitheads, today we talk with Laura Ghiacy. She's a personal trainer and has some amazing insights about diet culture and shame. And I realized that I'm probably living in a lot of that. Oh, Instagram is the worst and toxic. And she's just sort of opened my eyes to a lot of the bad things that we've even cultivated on this podcast that we need to think about from another perspective.
Yeah, it was super fun. I feel like there was a couple of moments where we would ask a relatively straightforward question and she would give like a much more in tune answer than I was ready for. And I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa, I never even thought about that. It was like a higher level for sure.
Yeah, like an example of me being like, well, you say that squatting ass to grass isn't necessary. You should stop worrying about that. And then I realized she's talking us through it. It's like, well, yeah, it is a privilege that I'm even mobile enough to do that. And then I shouldn't feel guilty if I'm having a day where I can't. And there's so much shame around not being, for me specifically, not being better than yesterday. And there's
Or
so
not doing
much,
the not
yeah,
doing the movement fully.
yeah. But
She's like, why is there shame in that? And I'm like, well, because wait, hold on. Because wait.
or the shame around food, right? And she compares a cheeseburger. Well, we'll just talk about it whenever we get into it because it's the opening part of this podcast. Just know that she definitely opened my mind.
Welcome to Total Fitheads.
Serious fitness for not so serious people.
Hi, welcome, Laura. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is gonna be an interesting one. Well, tell the audience a little bit about you and your background, and then we can dive in.
I am a certified personal trainer. I live in LA, but I'm obviously not from LA. And contrary to popular belief, I'm also not from Australia. So yeah, I'm born and raised in the UK. We moved here about 3 years ago, and yeah, certified personal trainer.
Awesome, love
Hot
it.
take, not Australian.
Not Australian or Kiwi or any of those other places. UK.
Love it. Okay. So the first thing that I was introduced to you was Max sending me your TikTok where you compare a protein cookie to a McDonald's cheeseburger. I'll let you finish
Well,
this out because I feel like the
it's got a
fitheads,
lot of attention.
yeah, it caught our attention.
It's actually not the first one I did. I compared a protein cookie to a Krispy Kreme donut. That was maybe like maybe a year ago. Time blur of time. I have no idea what year it is anymore. And so then yeah, just decided to compare a protein cookie to a McDonald's cheeseburger, and it got some people quite mad. Um, just talked about the calories and the macronutrients. I unfortunately didn't point out the fiber, which many people have pointed out to me, and I didn't talk about the salt. People were really mad about that. And then people were really mad that I didn't point out that the burger isn't vegan. But you can't
Oh
please them
yeah.
all.
You can't point everything out.
You can't please them all.
The cookie would still win for the salt thing because you need your electrolytes. So have the burger after your workout.
Hey,
Get that salt in.
that's if you haven't seen the video, that's basically it. Have the burger. It
Yeah.
tastes a lot better, let's be honest.
Yeah, and I love that you opened with we're gonna go with a whole cookie because who eats half a cookie?
That was the first one I did, the Krispy Kreme one with the cookie. So many people. Yeah, but you're only supposed to eat half the cookie. And I was like, yeah, but who's doing that? And so I had to preface it with A, I know I'm gonna get so much hate for this video, and B, we eat the whole cookie. Okay. And that's that.
Now it's
What's
weird though.
irritating
Were you
the protein.
expecting
Damn it, Max.
were you expecting hate? Like, why would you expect
Oh
hate
yeah.
from that type of
Yeah.
video?
Oh, those people on TikTok that don't have profile photos, they love to throw out that hate. That's the first sign. If they don't have a profile photo, I'm like, oh, this could go sour. Yeah, TikTok. I don't know why. I think TikTok specifically can be quite a lawless area.
The Wild West of comments.
So TikTok is a wild west. There's something about it.
Have you found Instagram is better?
Sometimes I think you can kind of create your own ecosystems a little bit on Instagram, or you can kind of create. I don't know. I'm not in the back end of social media, but I feel like people on your kind of surfaced content that you might like more on Instagram. So then you're kind of like, oh, this is a nice place. Whereas TikTok, it's just like a barrage of everything, and you just. Let's just say I get surfaced a lot of content that I don't think I would. That kind of maybe aggravates me a bit more, and so maybe and so I think I aggravate a few people as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. It seems like discovery on TikTok is way easier, and so they're throwing things at you that you didn't necessarily sign up for.
Yes.
Which is great for growth and also great for getting yelled at by strangers.
Yeah, it's great for growth and it's great for trolls. But you learn, I think, along the way, you learn to realize that any comment is a good comment for, the algorithm. So you're like, even if you are telling me that I should, go and get lost or some expletive version of that, then just thanks to the algorithm help.
That's nice. They tell you to get lost. They tell me to kill myself. What I find interesting is when people are like, when people give me tips on some, or when I see someone give you tips on yours, and it's just like some schlub in the middle of nowhere, and I'm like, oh, did you get a degree in that? Oh no. Oh, interesting. Interesting. How do you deal with that?
It's funny that they tell you to kill yourself. I did receive a couple of very questionable comments similar to that when and I don't know your thoughts on this, so I apologize. But I sort of pointed out the negative effects of the keto diet, and that was.
I believe you used the word cult. Don't talk about my church like that. Just kidding. I don't eat keto.
Yeah, you're never sure in
I know
specifically. It's like, oh, tread really carefully around here. But everyone is allowed their own opinion. It's just when when they death threats. I think I had a couple of moments at the end of that
overeating low carb.
I basically pointed out the negative effects that when I did keto many moons ago and knew no better, the negative effects that happened to me, and it was unfortunately men pointed out sort of why I was lying and why a couple of death threats. And I was like, yeah, but one of the things was, and I don't believe in TMI. One of the side effects was, I lost my menstrual cycle, and the men were like, she's lying. And I was like, how would you know? Sorry.
Why would you make that up?
Anyway, how to deal with negative comments. I think I took them quite seriously in the beginning. They can be a bit mean when they're about, like, I don't know, you personally. They can be quite horrid, but then ultimately you just have to come out the other end and be like, that's fine. It's how the algorithm.
Yeah, I guess it's true. I always say, which I stole this from Andy Warhol, don't read your press, weigh it. And that was, I feel like, very smart back then, and I just use it based on comments now instead of getting written about in the news.
That's a great line. I might have to steal that.
Yeah, go for it. I stole it. Let's talk about because we touched on mean comments on Instagram, but you've also talked about how Instagram is toxic. What?
I know, shocker. Wasn't that I think it came out in the press that like Facebook had known that Instagram was bad for teenage mentality. And I was like, I was shocked that people found this shocking, is how I felt about that. What's my perspective on that?
I know, that's funny because I hadn't thought about it like that. I was just sort of like, what? They've known this all along? And it makes perfect sense that they did. You're like, they're a data company. Of course I have this data.
I think the biggest data company, maybe, I don't know, don't quote me, in the world. And so, it's all in the press. And I said to my better half, I was like, yeah, but of course, like, that's part of their MO, is to like make teenagers feel like crap about themselves. Is my, glass half full theory around that.
I always thought that was like, well, yes, of course we all know that, but it was so ballsy for them to actually study it and then have a definitive answer.
That's a good point.
I thought they'd sort of hide in this sort of blissful ignorance or whatever.
That's a good point. And I think maybe, I don't know, I'm speculating, but maybe they had done for so many years, and then somebody had them over a barrel and was like, you need to either own this or I will tell everybody. So maybe, yes, you're right. So some credit to them for that.
Yeah. Well, and there was also something that came out that said they weight the negative reaction, the frowny, angry emoji, versus the positive one 4 times higher. 4, maybe even 5, I think I read. So, like, it goes back to what you're talking about with TikTok. You see things that maybe make you angry, and they're probably leaning into that. They'll lump you in a group of this is what makes you angry, and then give you that stuff.
Yeah. And then I guess, I mean, I don't know the psychology behind it, but then because it drums up that emotion of pissed offness, you do this kind of pissed off scrolling where you're like, and then you just get in some kind of rage, and it keeps you on the app longer, I guess, which is insane if you think about it.
Well, I've heard you're more likely to share with emotions that get you aroused. So sadness is not as strong as anger. So even though they're both negative emotions, right, over here.
Yeah.
And then happiness, even though it will work, but it's not as arousing,
Yeah.
So happiness will get shared, but like contentness less so. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's all, we're just being
sense.
manipulated.
Yeah, makes total sense.
Okay. You've also talked about that you can curate when you're on Instagram, right? So I don't know. What is your...
I love a restrict.
Yeah.
Restrict loads. I'm like, I don't want to see that restrict. I think, yeah, I would love to. I restrict many of people on Instagram. I haven't done it on TikTok yet, but I think specifically on Instagram, and maybe that's kind of where I live on Instagram, is like I see a lot of, I've managed to find kind of people to follow that make me feel a bit better about myself rather than make me feel shit about myself. So if there is something that just makes me feel a bit crappy, then I'll just be like, restrict, or I don't want to. I think it comes up with restrict. I can't remember the experience now, but it comes up with restrict, and then it's like, you don't want to see this, and you're like, nope, and then you can just press no, I don't want to see this.
Oh, so it's more about protecting your brain instead of, God, that's such a balanced way of thinking about it.
It's just in my world, that I'm like, I don't want to see. I know that there's certain types of content that I know that I don't want to see. So then I'm like, maybe that's, makes me sound like I only like to have this positive reinforcement around me. But, there are some things that I think people do find, I don't want to use that word, but I'm going to use the word. I think it's overused, triggering. But there is just certain content that I'm like, yeah, that's not going to make me feel that great, so I'm just going to restrict that content.
Yeah,
I have a buddy who, when he gets served ads for like Domino's or Little Caesars or pizza stuff, he flags it as sexually inappropriate. He's like, stop targeting me for pizza. I got it. And I'm like, well, it sounds like they're still serving you those ads.
I think that, you know what, I think that's a really good point. And I think because specifically with regards to like fitness content, there is some validity to calling some fitness content sexually inappropriate. So I may just have to, start that.
Well, you talk about that now it seems like you only want to see positive, but I get messed up about the positive a lot too. It feels like a spectrum of like, over here is like just insanely hate, and then over here is kind of insanely love too.
Yeah, there's like the positive vibes only area of Instagram, and where everybody's kind of got, I don't know, their lunch looks like an entire rainbow of vegetables or whatever. And I'm like, no, I agree with you. I think I don't know if the term toxic positivity, like that it's always these positive vibes only, and it's you're right. It's not realistic, and can be kind of, to a degree, just as detrimental as, festering off of anger of content. Yeah,
But it's so
toxic.
prevalent, I think. Why do you think that is in the fitness industry specifically? It's so common, that like blind positivity.
I think it ties in a bit to like the wellness industry as well, like this kind of Gwyneth Paltrow green juice zen-ness, that I don't know. I think, I also think people, I used to see this a lot in the UK. There was this rhetoric that exercises, which is not a lie, which is that exercise can be good for mental health, right? And so I think in the fitness and the wellness industry, they really embarked on this journey of like, exercise equals good mental health, and that's not always a given. But I think in the fitness industry, you do see that a lot. And I don't know why, and like sort of Instagram fitness, TikTok fitness marketing in general, everybody that exercises is literally looks like, the cover of a magazine, and they're really, really smiley. I don't look like that when I exercise. And so there's this idea that that is kind of a one-way street, and I don't think it's that black and white, but I do think that the fitness industry has jumped on that bandwagon quite heavily. It's not necessarily wrong, but it's just quite a blanket idea that fitness equals good, happy, positive vibes, and doesn't always.
Yeah, and in general, on Instagram, people are trying to show this curated, perfect version of their life, which goes back to teenagers thinking that their life sucks because they're seeing everyone's perfection. Yeah. Which I'm annoyed that their study was just teenagers. What, like, because I'm not a teen, I'm not allowed to be messed up about Instagram?
Yeah, that's a very valid point. Is that I might be like the right side of 30, but I still have some crappy mental health days. Like, what about me?
I'm depressed too.
Yeah. Or does that mean that I'm supposed to somehow be able to filter through that mess better because I'm an adult? That's point. It's really, I don't know. That's unfair.
It's a very good point. And you're right. Instagram and TikTok, I think, are these highlight reels of people doing their morning routines that involve long walks on the beach and apparently gleeful intermittent fasting. But if I were to try that, I would not be gleeful. But yeah, that's not really life.
Just walking around not eating.
I would be the complete opposite of that. Somebody, I can't take people seriously, but somebody did once comment and say, can we see your morning routine? And I was like, nobody wants to see that. Like, there's just, I don't know where this has become such a trending thing, similarly to like what I eat in a day content, but no, it doesn't look like that, what you see on the internet.
I blame Tim Ferriss. He was like, I wake up and I meditate while taking notes, and everything is perfect and it's the same every day. I mean, mine's the same every day. It's hitting snooze.
I saw oh crap, I've forgotten his name now. Oh god, somebody gets up. Somebody famous whose name's Marky Mark.
What? The guy, the pants dropping rapper?
Yes.
He has an early morning routine.
Yeah,
he eats a burger.
He wakes up at 4 a.m. and goes to the gym.
Oh yeah.
2 hours of sleep a day and
No. He wakes up at 4 and goes to the gym, and he's like 4 a.m. wake up, 4:05 prayer, 4:10, like brush my teeth, 4:11 go to the gym. Like, it's so specific, but he also like he has this whole list of blah 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 blah, blah, and then it's 7:30 p.m. go to bed. So it's not, cool, man. You're just on Asia time or whatever. Like you're not like killing it. You're just ahead of, you still get 7-8 hours of sleep.
Right. Totally. And and I think that actually it harpers back to kind of what you were saying about that kind of a positive toxic, like having a negative effect on people, all this kind of positivity. I can do this, I can do that. Look at everything that Mark Wahlberg, there we go. Look at everything that he does in a day. Oh, I'm just a unqualified person that isn't doing all of this, and therefore what am I achieving in the day? Well, I'm not achieving what Mark's achieving, therefore I'm like not
Right.
unachieving. And it's that kind of comparison-itis that comes with social media on either end of the spectrum.
I'm in the middle of reading, like I'm on the last step of, or the last reason of 7 reasons to delete your social media. Which is weird because that's also my job. So I guess I should delete my job. Whatever. It just touches on all that we're talking about. But it's nice to at least have a book that says, yeah, it's fine that you feel this crappy because that's everyone does.
Yeah, I think there is something to be said about recognizing the crappiness, if that makes sense. Like I think, unfortunately, and maybe that's what that study that came out about Facebook and Instagram, knowing that people's mental health teenagers' mental health had a negative effect on that. I think there's something to be said about recognizing the crappiness and then being able to kind of compartmentalize it, or being able to kind of step back from it. So that's kind of like, if I restrict somebody on Instagram, it's no offense to them. It's just, you make me feel a bit crap about myself. Therefore,
it's a little offense to them.
They don't know, though. They don't know. So it's
yes,
okay.
That's true.
But they don't know. But it's more so like I've been able to say, I'm going to step back. Your what I eat in a day content doesn't make me feel very good. Therefore, I'm going to restrict that, basically.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, then I've seen a couple times you've highlighted mean comments to you and then just like went at it, which I love. That's my favorite.
There's very few of those make it through, because what I'll do is I'll get a mean comment, I'll really quickly film a response, and my better half will be like, okay, can't just do you feel better now? Yes. Okay, great. Now you got to delete it, and you're not allowed to post.
You write that letter to your boss, and then you throw it out.
Right, it's exactly the same. What I think I did once a sweet potato video, and it was a sweet potato versus a white potato, kind of very similar to the cheeseburger video, and a couple of comments were like, oh god, and I don't know what your audience's thoughts on this are, but
our sweet potato audience, yeah.
Well, the few people commented and said that I was the same color as a sweet potato, and or that I was the same color as Donald Trump. It's like, hold on. So that I had to, I do sometimes. I just think it's good to just not let those things go down quietly.
Sure. I worry about highlighting and encouraging that, right? But it is so satisfying to be like, here's why you're wrong and dumb.
It's so satisfying. And I have to like tone down my emotion around it. And as I said, not many of those make it through, but when they do, it's so enjoyable.
We talked a little bit about like too much positivity. I also want to touch on because you commented on Jonah Hill saying that he doesn't want positive comments or negative comments. Just don't talk about my body, which I think is great. If you want to go into that a little deeper, I love that your thoughts on it.
So most people probably know, but his body has changed, and so but he has come to a place where he doesn't want people to comment on his changing body shape, and nothing would make me happier than if more people took this approach of just not commenting on people's bodies. I am of the opinion that even if you compliment somebody's weight loss in a so-called positive way, I'm of the opinion that can also have negative effects, and kind of make people think that their previous body wasn't good enough, and if they are to gain weight, what kind of what does that say about them as a person, etc. And so I'm generally of the opinion that like commenting on weight loss is not a great thing. And I think it's great that somebody in the public eye has come out and said, just don't comment on my body. I did say actually the other day, I was like, I think, would it be received the same if it was a female saying it? I don't know. But I think it's just good for somebody to come out and say, don't comment on my body. It's not always a positive thing, or X, Y, Z. And it's just a different narrative around bodies changing, which should be normalized, but it's not.
Yeah, that's interesting to think if a woman had just said, "You're not allowed to talk about my body." I feel like that would
What
be...
are we supposed to talk about? Jeez.
Right. Well, how will I sell my tabloid paper? God damn it. I have only caught a little bit of it, but somebody I think interviewed or asked Adele about her body, because she's in the press a lot at the moment, and asked her about her kind of weight loss, and she just said something like, "That's the most boring question you could ask me. Like, can you ask me something else?" And I was like, that's refreshing.
Wow, that is such a good point. Why don't you ask about my insane talent for singing or this album that I made? Yeah.
All the abundance of other things that's going on. But yeah. So I think it's important that people in the public eye talk about this, because God knows they're under a lot of scrutiny. And then hopefully that will trickle down and we'll just stop talking about people's bodies.
Yeah, but it's just so fun.
Okay.
Well, what are you thinking? Just commenting on Stanimal. We had a bodybuilder on like one of our first episodes, and this dude is just huge and insanely impressive. And I think Max and I are just
and our questions were like, so quads. And he was like, yeah. And we were like, interesting. So stupid. How about okay, let's change tracks a little bit. How about some positives? What is a positive thing that you've seen from fitness talk?
Specifically
TikTok fitness.
Oh, TikTok fitness. Good question. I like to see that there are people of all shapes and sizes putting their fitness on fitness TikTok. Nothing makes me happier than people doing of all shapes, all sizes, all body types, just busting out their strength and doing something that I know majority of us could not do. I don't know if you guys follow Meg Boggs. She's incredible. And she does these push-up challenges that I'm like, I haven't seen her do one for a little while, but I'm like, I don't know anybody else that could do that. She's amazing.
So wait, do you follow her on Instagram or TikTok? Both.
I'm both. She's whenever I open any social media account, I want to see her.
Yes, I'm looking now. She looks fantastic. We're gonna have to hit her up, see if we can
find her.
Wonderful.
You talk a lot about thin privilege. Tell me why when I talk about fitness on Instagram, it's privileged and I should be aware of that.
That I get a lot of hate for this. I will say that. But an example of that would be, I can be seen to eat a cheeseburger and it be seen as like inspiration, or oh, thank you for normalizing foods, etc. And then somebody in a larger body, God forbid, they eat a cheeseburger on the internet and they will be trolled to the nth degree and told that they need to not eat or eat a salad or something horrendous. So it's the kind of the double standard there. I did post something talking about thin privilege. It was one of my first ones I talked about thin privilege. And some Marissa Matthews, her name is, she took the audio from TikTok and kind of did her own video, and she kind of lip synced along to my audio. And the video that I put up received relatively 80% positive response. And she did the video, took my audio, and I mean, the trolling was disgusting. Like, the nasty comments that she got. And I was like, that is thin privilege. It's that she can take the same audio that I said. I have relatively positive reviews or comments, and she gets absolutely trolled for it, even though she's saying the exact same thing.
Yeah, it makes me think about everything I'm posting and how in another context would not be taken so positively.
It's a difficult one. And I think, I don't know if they're as popular as they were, but there's kind of 10,000 calorie challenges and things like that you see kind of very lean, fit people doing. And they're, I guess maybe they're more of a YouTube thing. I'm not sure, but, people get, oh my God, you're so inspirational. Oh my God, I wish I had your metabolism. I wish I could eat like you, etc., etc. And then God forbid a person in a larger body do it, and they would, be absolutely annihilated.
Well, Max, I think you'll appreciate this. She's also asserted that you should not track your macros.
You're not a tracker?
I'm not a tracker. Are you a tracker? Am I amongst trackers?
Allie likes to tell me that I should track things all the time. I like to point out that Allie doesn't actually eat food. She eats ingredients for food.
Bachelor chow.
And that she's saying like, oh, you should do this and this and this. And I'm like, wait, but what about like lasagna? What are you going to do about that? And she's like, well, it's impossible. You can't, it's impossible. No one can eat lasagna. And I'm like, well, here we are. This is you and this is me.
I'm eating lasagna.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what? From a very personal perspective, I have had a very difficult relationship with food, tracking calories, tracking macros, etc. It took me down to a very dark place, and I just don't think that is the be all and end all with regards to how I work at my best. My mental health was down the drain when I was tracking macros, etc. And it's not directly to do with the tracking of macros and calories, but that was definitely a cog in the system. And so I think too often in the fitness world, it's seen as like that is fitness, is tracking calories and macros. And my perspective is just that there is a different side to that, and you don't have to do that. And if you happen to use a calorie tracking app that tells you you're in the red when you've had maybe too much lasagna, and that makes you feel like shit because it's in the red, don't have to feel like
Yeah, don't feel bad. This is a great message.
don't feel bad.
Stick with me.
Yeah, and I'm looking at these things that you're talking about specifically. Don't track your macros. Don't delete your tracking app. But the question you pose is, how much time are you saving when you stop worrying about these things and stop tracking? And that makes total sense, except specifically for me, and I'm going to say that's probably not normal for other people. If I stopped tracking, it would take me so much longer to figure out what I'm going to eat. And I just do the same thing every day because it's so time efficient. So I feel like it would be negative time if I stopped tracking. Then it would take me forever to make dinner because I have too many options.
I totally get that. And it's individual, right? I think it is always an individual's perspective on it, and it works for some, but for those that struggle with it, or genuinely speaking from my own experience, it made me feel like absolute crap. That I was like, man, this is not a way to live. I did unfortunately also prescribe to sort of the Gillian Michaels idea that one should eat the regular recommended daily allowance for a toddler. So that was also a faux pas.
Well, fair is fair. We don't know. Are you 2 feet tall? You could be the size of a toddler.
Could be.
We don't know.
I could be, but I'm not.
So much smaller in person is the number one thing I hear.
Big personality. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I do think we are chronically under eating. A lot of it too is like tracking technology is telling me that my calories should be way lower than I think.
Yeah.
You're probably not into tracking or like specifically wearables, are you?
Do you know what I did? I used to wear an Apple Watch, and then classic Laura became very obsessive of that as well. Yeah, maybe I'm seeing a trend now that I'm talking about it.
This is a therapy session, so it's
I know. I was going to say this is one of the.
We'll send you the bill.
The closing the rings, etc., things like that. And then plus at the time, actually, when I was wearing my tracking watch, I was doing a lot of like HIIT classes and that sort of thing. And so if I would kind of feel down on myself if I hadn't apparently burnt that many calories in the workout, etc. And I hear clients say it too. And I used to have this rhetoric in my head, which was like, oh, if I haven't tracked the workout, and not that it didn't happen, but it's less valid. And that is not valid in my head.
It just needs to alert my college friends that I worked out this morning.
I have worked out, damn it.
This Apple has that thing. And then I see when my friends have worked out too. And then obviously send them some sort of like backhanded compliment.
That's so cute how you just did 10 burpees. That's so nice.
Oh, wait. We should talk about burpees because I saw you post about that too. Max, you're gonna love this one.
Oh no, I don't like burpees.
Nobody likes burpees.
I don't make anybody do a burpee that I train. But I know that's not everybody agrees with me on that, but I don't train anybody that needs to do that in daily life. So I don't make anybody do a burpee.
That makes so much sense. Gosh, and CrossFit's like, we're functional fitness. When you have to get to that job interview and you are walking up the stairs with 2 feet at a time, box jumping.
When you have to handstand walk up the steps to the
and then chest bump to the floor. But that was another one actually. People were quite upset about that one. But there is method to the madness in that, somebody did post on that video and they said something along the lines of it's a high calorie burn move, energy efficient move. But when I work with clients and we're not tracking how many calories we've burnt on the Apple Watch, the burpee isn't required. And as you said, when one goes to a job interview, we're not like chest to the floor as we go up the stairs. It's not the most functional of moves, in my opinion.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about with your clients. If I'm not focusing on my weight loss and being different than my before photo, what the heck do I even track?
What are we tracking? We track how heavy we're lifting. We track how long we can plank for. We're tracking how far we can run. We track how we feel after a workout. I mean, I say to clients, like, if you don't like something, 9 times out of 10, we won't do it. But if I think it's important, we'll do it even if you hate it, basically. But we track generally how we're feeling. I have some pre and postnatal clients, so that's kind of prepping for birth and after birth stuff. The kind of less aesthetics. That's whether it focuses not on aesthetics. That's not to say that my clients don't have aesthetic goals. They do, and I'm not one to tell people what they should and shouldn't do, but it's just shifting the focus.
Yeah, I love the idea of lifting heavier, because aesthetically, like, look at power lifters. They're not looking like they should be posing on Instagram, but holy crap, they're lifting.
Yeah, I did. Yes. They're not necessarily, filming their deadlifts from the arse up like they are on Instagram, but lifting strong. Oh no, I'm gonna regret saying that one.
Well, how am I supposed to grow my following if I'm not doing that?
You know what? Somebody asked me this the other day, and they were like, do you not think that you would have had a stronger business if you kind of not filmed deadlifts from the arse up, because that wouldn't have benefited anyone, but more so kind of focused on the aesthetic side of personal training, and potentially yes, I think you're right when you say once people grow following very quickly through those kinds of means, yes, potentially I might have had a stronger business or more followers, etc. But I don't know that I could have lived. My problem is that I didn't want to add to an industry that already made me feel like shit in the beginnings. So I just didn't. There was kind of a very turning point. Somebody had posted something on the internet, on Instagram, that had said, there's $1 billion industry that's making money off of you feeling like shit. And I was like, oh, good God, like I can't add to that.
Yeah. Well, is that a conscious? It must be a conscious effort though, because that whole, I mean, you're in the industry, you're part of that industry,
Yes.
and so
Yes.
you have to sort of find your way. How do you sort of navigate that?
Good question. I definitely have found those before me that have kind of paved a way for me to even have a career in this line of work in the fitness industry. You know, that I'm not the first person to talk about this kind of thing, and you know, the kind of health at every size movement, etc. Those kind of areas that, you know, have paved a way for me to be able to follow on from them and learn from them, and actually kind of have a viable stream in this way. But it also helps to restrict those on Instagram that make you feel like, because I often, when I started in the fitness industry, I thought that fitness was just this one, it was all this one thing, which is tracking macros, tracking calories, eating boiled chicken and asparagus, and you know, that was it. And it's, you know, it's not.
Allie's triggered right now, but yeah, I completely.
My boiled chicken breakfast is triggered. Just kidding. I don't eat breakfast.
Just that butter coffee.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk more about keto as a cult, because
No.
My favorite thing is to call it keto, because I can't tell you how immediately triggered people are. I'm like, you know, that thing, the keto, right? Is that what you're doing? Keto?
So much. Shut up.
And they're like, they like get itchy like all over, and I'm like, what's happening? I'm just talking about keto.
I'm gonna do this.
Stupid waste of time, keto. Oh, I'm sorry. What is it called? Keto.
Sometimes he'll ask me if I'm in ketosis. It's infuriating.
I'm gonna go to Venice Beach and ask if they've got keto coffee.
Highly recommend it.
Extra charge for saying it wrong.
Yes.
Which is a lot because it's already expensive.
It's already like, yeah, right?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. You know, I think people get very wedded to their way of eating and their lifestyle habits, and it's right, that's my problem here. And I think there's a lot of shame in it, that if you are eating, and that kind of harpers back to the protein cookie versus the cheeseburger, there's a lot of shame with regards to how people eat. And a vast majority of those comments on that video were, thank you for making me not feel guilty for eating a cheeseburger. I was like, there's no, you know, guilt isn't an ingredient in any food, but yeah, they'll.
Well, I think so many things went into that. Like, when I saw that, the first thing I thought of was immediately marketing. You know, I see so many things that say like a good source of protein, like on the label. And then we were talking about this last episode, Allie, that like things can be a good source of protein and also a good source of all these other terrible things that we just don't put on, you know,
a good source of guilt.
Yeah, right. Totally. You're right with regards to the marketing. And that kind of also plays into the food stigma as well. It's like, you know, if it says, if something is screaming at you that it's high in protein, then we automatically think it's good. And then vice versa, if something has got the red McDonald's label on it, we automatically think it's bad. Where, you know, food, you guys know this, food doesn't have morality, but unfortunately we're made to think it does, or that we need to earn a certain type of food through working out, through tracking. And that is a slippery slope.
Yeah, totally. I don't know. So I wanted to bring this up and fight you on this, because you talked about Stephen Colbert tweeting about Krispy Kreme donuts.
Yeah,
and you, I feel like, how long have we been talking? And I'm already convinced that I shouldn't fight you on this, but okay, to set the stage for the fit heads, Stephen Colbert tweeted about Krispy Kreme giving away a free donut if you get vaccinated. And he said it's for people who want to be vaccinated, but also still have a death wish. Max, it's supposed to be a joke. Obviously, Max is laughing. You were claiming that's fat phobic. Go ahead.
Do you know what?
Back
This
it
is
up.
so long ago that I can't really recall.
Oh, right.
it,
Okay. So
but
yeah, just that like what he said was
I
fat phobic
did,
because
yeah.
he's saying like having a donut means
Donut
that
is
you're
a death
bad,
wish.
you'll gain weight and
Yeah.
you'll die, and
Yes.
that's super fat phobic. Which
But
yeah, good.
to my point is that he is kind of harping back to this old rhetoric that thin equals healthy. And you know, you can go from one extreme to the other, but there's this, if you have a donut, you'll get, I'm obviously paraphrasing, but this is him saying, if you have a donut, you'll get fat and then you'll die. And there's this fear amongst it that, you know, you get fat and die, which is completely incorrect. But you're not guaranteed a death wish by eating a donut. So you're already creating fear around a donut. And fear mongering around food. And it goes back to that food stigma that we talked about before. B, if you just take a look at somebody that isn't this very thin, over-sexualized fitness influencer, but, you know, as you said, powerlifters, they aren't this super thin person, but yet they are some of the healthiest and some of the strongest people. And so it's this a rhetoric that like thin equals healthy, which it doesn't. And if you eat bad, quote unquote, bad food, you will die. And again, incorrect and very, whilst I understand it was a joke, it plays into people's insecurities around food, around body image, around stigma and shame. And that I just don't like.
And I think it comes from a place where you're like, yeah, cool, man. Thanks for joking about that. But like some people are really, that like hits really hard. That's like a lot of people are struggling with that. You know, maybe you should just take a seat.
Right. And you know, I think it is a joke. I completely understand that. But he is a person of such influence and such kind of notoriety that somebody that doesn't understand the intricacies of, you know, food shame, etc., will just take that as face value and be like, holy shit, I can never eat a donut again. And in my opinion and in my experience, it is more unhealthy to be fearful of a food than to just have a donut.
Yeah, that's fair. And when I initially wanted to bring this up and counter you is because I saw him as not insulting people, but insulting Krispy Kreme. So I'm hoping that's the idea behind it, because I'm such a Stephen Colbert fan, and maybe that's just the reason I'm defending him. But the 88% of Americans have some sort of metabolic dysfunction, and I want to blame that company, you know, that him and all the other companies that are feeding us processed food and sugars and things that, like, the standard American diet is what he's insulting, not people. But I get that people will take that as, oh, I food shame and connecting just being bad with the donut. So I'm already convinced. I'm not even going to fight you back.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Well, and you've also said that you don't agree that sugar is the deadly white stuff. And I'm over here being like, the standard American diet is terrible, and like we're being fed awful stuff and should hate these corporations for making it normal to eat sugar.
Sure, I think I don't think sugar is the deadly white stuff, but I think there maybe it comes from a really privileged place for me to be able to say that sugar isn't the deadly white stuff, but it also comes from a privileged place to say the standard American diet probably isn't great, maybe, but in and amongst that comes somebody that can, you know, access the internet, has easy access to exercise, access to like quote unquote like healthier foods, etc. I have the ability to make a choice. So I'm kind of talking around in circles, but there is a lot of privilege in around me being able to say it's not the deadly white stuff. You don't need to be scared of it. But I am in a thin body, so like, you know, that's a privileged thing to say. Could we all do with a bit more access to healthier foods? Yes. Could we all do with, you know, more time to create healthier foods? Yes. And so it's like both sides come from a real privileged place of being like, sugar is bad, we shouldn't eat it. But who, like, not all of us have the time to have a different option. But also, sugar isn't that bad. Like the two extremes, I think the fitness industry generally is on the extremes. It's either everything is fine or everything is bad. And it's like, actually, we just need a kind of middle. But I am loath to say the word balance because I flipping hate just balance. And I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, no, the idea that the healthy, active lifestyle is a privilege. Yeah, you certainly put that in my brain, and it's true. When I'm like, eating sugar is bad, like, well, sugar's in a lot of food that is easily accessible to lots of people and very inexpensive. And so then I'm over here being like, well, just go to your local Whole Foods and buy some celery when people can't,
$9 celery.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think very often the fitness industry can simplify things. And I even used to hear people in the UK say like, oh, well, a tomato costs this much. If you're buying a McDonald's, you might as well just buy a tomato. I'm obviously making that up, but along the lines of that. And it was like, sure, yes, fruit and veg in itself can be relatively cheap, but it's not just the actual physical cost of it. It's the time cost of making a meal. Like, not everybody has time at home to be making meals. It is the cost. It is the access to the supermarket. It is the knowledge of how to cook something, or access to a kitchen to cook something, etc., etc. So there's a lot of privilege.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about thin privilege. Max and I discuss this often. We come across women that don't want to get too bulky. What is your experience with that?
All the time, bulky people, women. I don't want to get too bulky. In my opinion, that's just fear mongering from the fitness industry to encourage women to be as small as possible. Because I don't think I've yet posted it, but I just made a video about getting women want to get toned and not bulky.
And you're like, what's toned? And they're like, I don't know, just lean. I just strong. And you're like, what is hold on.
What are you saying? But they've just been fed, a narrative that women don't get too big. And so whether that is bulk in terms of a muscular physique or kind of body fat physique, women do not get too big, full stop. And so I think it's just fear mongering from a fitness and diet industry that if women get too big, you are therefore deemed not attractive and therefore you failed as a woman, which makes me very sad. And the word bulky or toned are not allowed around me.
Yeah. The idea that a woman shouldn't get too big, I love tying it to this. Yeah, we don't like.
Also, shout out to all the tall girls out there.
Yeah, yeah, right. You're supposed to be smaller than your partner.
Can you get shorter? Yeah. How do I get shorter?
Right.
Then you have a larger dating pool or whatever. But yeah, women should take up less space. How stupid that we should have less area on this earth to be.
Yes. Take up as little space as possible. The only time you're allowed to increase in size is if and when you are carrying a child. And then as soon as you've had that child, you must quickly revert back to your high school body size as soon as possible.
That makes sense. Well, you are a personal trainer, so how do I spot reduced body fat?
Oh, Christ above. Lose lower belly fat.
Yes, that's so funny because that's exactly where I need to lose it.
That's what I need to target.
Target.
I target. It makes me very sad that and you see that's another side of like the social media. The social media. I sound like my grandmother. The
computers and the internet and
that I think is kind of lied to people is that it's the whole booty gains, reduce lower belly fat sort of exercise fads that make me quite sad because I think people are sold this fake narrative that they can and they should change to look a certain way, and when one does fail at that, it's your fault, not the industry's lying fault.
Yeah, but 30-day tummy challenges make so much money.
I know. Do you know what? It was maybe a year ago that I realized that my name is Ghiacy and I have an arse in my name. And I was like, my God, I could have done such a great booty gains program. God's sake.
Just do it. Why not?
Just an ironic program that you watch and not actually do.
Yeah, it's totally a joke, but definitely buy it. But it's totally a joke, but definitely it's only $9.99.
Recurring charge. We mentioned a little earlier that this is just a therapy session. Thanks for joining.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I was due one this week.
How often do you feel like a therapist for your clients? Because we've asked this of other trainers too.
All the time,
yeah.
but I love it. I have to preface it with I'm obviously not a licensed therapist, so do not take my advice ever. But no, often actually clients will say like, it's just like a therapy session, etc. But I think it goes hand in hand. Like, once you take yourself out of your regular circles of kind of work or home life, etc., and like you kind of work on yourself. It sounds very woo-woo to say that, but I do think clients have just that hour of time to kind of digest what it is that's been going on at the moment or whatever. And I do feel like a therapist sometimes, but I do a little bit love it.
Yeah, it seems to me that to do anything that you do in that field, that you kind of need to want to listen and be there for people. I can't imagine. It takes a special type of person to do what you do.
I just hope that most people would never take my actual advice of what to do in real life, because I would be like, oh, just tell them to go to hell. I'm like, that's your boss that pays your salary. Maybe don't do that. But yeah, no, there is an element of that. But I find training sessions to be quite a vulnerable time for people. It's seeing what the body can't do, how they're feeling, etc. And so yeah, there is this level of opening up during that time.
And I imagine you're cultivating people that sign up with you that are already needing like what you're offering, right? Very specifically in the not wanting to take before and after photos kind of thing. I'm just wondering if there's anyone that you wouldn't accept for any reason. Do you cultivate specific clients, or is it you're getting the people that fit well with what you're offering?
It's a good question. Somebody the other day said to me, they were on my kind of bio, it says, if you want weight loss advice, go elsewhere. And that whilst I had originally always put that up as a bit tongue in cheek, like I was just, if you do want weight loss advice, go elsewhere. But the person that I'd spoken to was like, that's already like a headline for you, that if that is what somebody is looking from a personal trainer, you're not going to give them that. And so it kind of already in and itself cultivated that kind of ecosystem. And so, which I had never thought of, but it kind of works to do that. And that's not to say that people that I work with don't want to lose weight, but it may be a byproduct of exercising and not the reason they're exercising. That some people do still slide into my DMs and ask how they can lose certain amount of weight, but I have to tell them that I'm not the person to ask for that.
Or shift their thinking.
Shift their thinking. And you know what? If that is the most that slides into my DMs, I'm real happy about that, because it could be a hell of a lot worse.
Well, there's always tomorrow. You can
There's
always get it
tomorrow. There's always
always another DM floating in, and you're like, wow, whoa, okay, nice.
Yeah, thankfully, touch wood, not yet.
Specifically something I wanted to bring up is that you said ass to grass is overrated. Convince me that I shouldn't be getting as low as possible in my squats, because that sounds like it would be less stressful for me.
I am of the general opinion, again, it harpers back to like that burpee idea. Why do we need ass to grass? I don't need my ass to grass, but
it's functional.
Yeah.
Somewhere when milking a cow, but
when I'm putting stuff away, milking a cow. I'm putting stuff away in my garage. I need to pick it up as low as possible and thrust it to the top shelf.
Potentially. I will say that there is potential there. You know, I don't have such a vendetta against Aster grass as I do for burpees, so I can sometimes see why people might need that. But I think people think harpers back to shame. I think people think if they're not squatting as low as possible with the heaviest weights possible, then they're not squatting. And it's like, well, you are, and that's just, you don't have to do it that way. And especially if it's painful, or it's not something that you do on the regular, or we're not training for that, and this is just this kind of idea what some people have in their heads of like, must squat asked grass with SUV weight on my back sort of thing. And it's like, man, you don't really. There are other kind of goals we can have. It just doesn't have to be that.
Well, an SUV weight, unless I did an SUV last week, then I have to do an SUV plus 5 pounds. Otherwise, I'm worthless.
Otherwise, what is the point? I'm totally joking. Yes. So,
yes.
I think
we're joking.
I know. I need to be. I always feel like I need to say it because some people don't. I don't. Maybe it's the British thing. I don't know. And they're like, she's so serious. I'm like, I don't think I am. But I think there are certain things in the fitness industry that if you can't do them, you are a failure. Aster grass can sometimes be one of them. When I worked at high intensity kind of classes place, it was like, if you couldn't like box jump the highest box jump, what were you even doing there? And it was like,
hurting my shins, obviously.
Yes.
Wasting really? My time. That's
truly. Truly. So yes, I think we put on a pedestal certain things that we see fitness influencers do and think we need to be able to do them, and it's we don't.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point.
I had somebody once come in and see me, and they said they want. I had to Google it after this, but I think it was. Oh crap! I'm going to get his name wrong. It was a very famous basketball player whose name I can't remember because I don't follow sports, and he was kneeling on maybe Michael Jordan. He was kneeling on a inflatable kind of yoga ball, like inflatable ball, whilst doing like shoulder pressing.
Functional, and for when you're cooking while kneeling on a
came in, they were like, I would like to be able to achieve this, and I was like, I have no idea
why
how to help you achieve this. And yes, why? But it's that kind of, we put fitness influencers and athletes, etc., on a pedestal, and we want to be able to achieve that, and we think we're a better person if we achieve that, or if we eat like them, etc. And it's smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, I feel like if you're shifting a mentality to what you're doing is going to be more effective, because I've talked about this a lot because I think about it all the time. There's this study where they had these maids that were really active, but had unhealthy biomarkers, right? They're overweight and cholesterol and whatever, but they're moving around all day, lifting, vacuuming, doing stuff. And so then they took half of them and said, hey, do you realize what you're doing is way more than the recommended amount of activity for a day? You're working out. And the other half, they didn't tell anything. And the ones that they just thought they were working out and realized that they were healthy, lost weight, had thinner waistbands. Of course, we don't care about that, but their biomarkers improved, and it was the only change was that then they just decided that they were healthy.
Yeah.
So that I want to tie into, if you're eating a cheeseburger and shamed about it, you're somehow potentially, and this is science, somehow maybe potentially going to put that weight on more than using it efficiently, and your body would metabolize it better because you're not feeling this horrible stress about it. And that's, I was being sarcastic, right? I've taken that very farther steps than any sort of science would cover. But the idea of taking that mental negative tie to food away, I feel like could potentially just make you healthier because you have a better mental space.
Totally. That, I think the mental health is health, full stop. And shame is a nasty, I call it a nasty virus, but in 2021, it's not really like a good thing to say that. But it's shame is a real sticking point for many people. And you're right, when it comes to food, when it comes to how we look, when it comes to how we exercise, it's a stopping point for millions. I mean, the people that I read on TikTok that say, they won't step foot in a gym because they're so ashamed of how they look, or they're ashamed that they don't know what they're doing, or that eating a cheeseburger induces so much shame in people. It's like, actually, in comparison to this so-called healthy protein cookie, it's not actually. The barometers that we put around shame, which is within food, which tends to be kind of high calorie, high fat, etc. When you compare it to something that you think is going to be healthy, it's a little eye-opening.
Okay, so how shameful should I feel for drinking?
Depends why we're drinking. I don't want to.
Oh, interesting.
This is the one question that we ask everyone. We only have one that carries over every episode. You want to ask, Max?
How do you incorporate drinking with your fitness?
I drink red wine. The only one I really like. I am not actually a big drinker. I didn't drink for many years. And then I dabbled in a little bit of alcohol, didn't really like any of it. And then my better half introduced me to red wine and dark chocolate. And it was like marriage made in heaven.
You're like, interesting. Has anyone thought of this before?
Oh my God, this is so innovative. I need this in my life. So yes, there is drinking. I drink red wine. I love red wine.
What do you tell clients?
It's a good question. I have a couple of clients that we talk about when and why they drink. So if they are drinking a lot, why is that? Is it kind of what's the word? Words have escaped me today. Kind of a relaxing, and that's not necessarily a negative thing, but it's if you cannot cope with what's going on in the day, are we turning thank you, an escape? Yes. Is it this kind of, I'm turning to alcohol because it's the only thing that's making me feel good? That's when it
Instagram's not working, so
Instagram's not working, and so they've turned to alcohol, and that's when it teeters on. Kind of, I'm like, okay, let's talk about that. But generally speaking, I'm like, I'm having red wine on my Friday nights.
Again, it sounds so well balanced. We're not allowed to say balanced. I'm sorry.
Do you know what? I need to readopt these words, because it's normally these words like balance piss me off, because you see somebody on Instagram say everything in moderation, and then they're like, green
except white rice.
Exactly. Except white rice or white bread or whatever it is, and you're like,
because then you're a bad person.
Yes, right, that's exactly it. If you have white rice,
I may go delete Instagram. What if we just petition to have no comments? But I'd still see garbage posts.
Yeah,
I see some. I think you can now toggle to kind of say not show how many likes something has got. I've seen this a little bit.
Well, then how do people know how valuable I am?
Yeah,
exactly. Well, it's whether you've got a blue tick or not.
That's true.
That's very true.
Or hip dips. What did you call them?
Oh God, the hip dips. Yeah. That came from me having to explain it to my mum, and she was like, "What's a hip dip?" And I was like, "Oh, okay. Hold on, Mum. Let's take a step back."
Yikes. All right. Well, this has been awesome and enlightening. I'm gonna go delete TikTok. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna follow you before I delete it, but then I'm gonna follow you first, and then
yeah, and then curate.
I don't have a blue tick, so I'm not really worthy of a follow.
Ew, what? Wait. Okay, delete this episode.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And where can the fit heads go find you and see some well-balanced posting?
Non-balanced, well balanced. I'm surprisingly on TikTok at Laura Ghiacy, and then on Instagram I'm Laura_Ghiacy, which is Ghiacy. I'm learning to love the underscore.
Yeah, it's so mysterious and different, and you have to
Quirky.
say it on a podcast.
I know. Quirky.
Word, love it. Okay, well, thanks again.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to the fit heads. If you can rate and review on Apple Podcasts, that helps us out a whole lot. Go clear out your brain and your feed, and we will see you next week.